My name is Tori Morrison. I'm 32 years old. 5 years ago, my mother called me 3 days before Thanksgiving. 7 words. That's all it took to shatter everything I thought I knew about family. Don't come home. Victoria doesn't want drama. No explanation. No apology. Just a door slammed in my face after 27 years of trying to belong. I spent that Thanksgiving alone in a Boston restaurant, watching happy families laugh together while I fought back tears over a cold turkey dinner. I had no idea that the strangers at the next table would become the family I'd always dreamed of. And I had no idea that 5 years later, they'd be introduced at my wedding as the parents of the bride, while my biological parents stood watching, uninvited, realizing they'd been replaced in every way that actually matters. Let me take you back to that phone call. November 21st. I was in my tiny studio apartment in Boston, surrounded by half-packed bags and the scent of a pumpkin candle. I'd already bought my plane ticket home to Connecticut. Non-refundable, of course. Mom's name flashed on my screen. I smiled. "Hey, Mom." Her voice was flat. Cold. "I need to tell you something." My stomach dropped. That tone never meant anything good. "What's wrong? Is Dad okay?" "Your father's fine." A pause. "Listen, I've been thinking, don't come home this year." I actually laughed. I thought she was joking. "What do you mean?" "Victoria doesn't want drama. She's pregnant again and she doesn't need the stress." I gripped the phone tighter. "Drama? What drama? I haven't even talked to Victoria in months." "Exactly." Mom's voice hardened. "And let's keep it that way. You know how you get." "How I get?" My voice cracked. "Mom, I literally just asked her last year why she didn't invite me to her baby shower." "That's not drama. That's a question." "See? That's exactly what I mean. You always make everything about you." I stood there frozen, watching the snow fall outside my window. 27 years old, and my mother was telling me I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving because I'd once asked why I was excluded. "Mom, I already bought my ticket." "Then get a refund." Her tone left no room for negotiation. "Victoria is pregnant. She doesn't need stress. You understand?" The line went dead. I understood perfectly. I'd always been the acceptable sacrifice. I wish I could say this was the first time. But as I sat on the edge of my bed, the memories came flooding back. My 16th birthday party. I'd planned it for months. A small gathering with my 3 closest friends. Mom promised we'd have cake and go bowling. But that morning, Victoria called crying because she'd failed her calculus final. My party was canceled. We spent the day consoling my sister instead. "Don't be dramatic, Tori. Your sister needs us more right now. You can celebrate next weekend." We never did. Then there was my college graduation. I'd worked so hard. For years of late nights, part-time jobs, scraping by on ramen. I was the first person in my family to graduate with honors. When I walked across that stage, I looked for my parents in the crowd. Their seats were empty. They showed up 2 hours late. Victoria had a routine prenatal checkup that couldn't be rescheduled. "You understand, sweetheart. Your sister's baby is more important than a ceremony. More important than me." That's what she meant. That's what she always meant. I learned early that complaining only made things worse. Don't be so sensitive. Stop making everything about yourself. Why can't you just be happy for your sister? So I stopped complaining. I became smaller. Quieter. I thought if I was agreeable enough, easy enough, invisible enough, maybe then I'd finally earn their love. But sitting there with that worthless plane ticket, I realized the truth. There was no amount of small that would ever be small enough. I called my father. Maybe some small part of me still believed he'd stand up for me. Just this once. "Hey, kiddo." His voice was cautious. He already knew. "Dad, did Mom tell you?" A long pause. "She mentioned it. And you're okay with this? You don't think maybe I should be allowed at Thanksgiving with my own family?" Another pause. Longer this time. "You know how your mother is, Tori. She's just trying to keep the peace." "By excluding me?" "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Dad? Tell me. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're all choosing Victoria over me again." Silence. I could hear him breathing. I could almost see him sitting in his recliner, rubbing his forehead the way he always did when he wanted to disappear from a conversation. Dad, do you want me there? 5 seconds passed. 10. He cleared his throat. I think it's better if you listen to your mother this year. Something inside me went quiet. Not sad. Not angry. Just empty. Okay, Dad. Tori, don't be. I hung up. He didn't call back. Thanksgiving Day arrived gray and cold. I woke up to the sound of my neighbor's family arriving. Footsteps overhead, children laughing. The smell of something delicious drifted through the vents. Someone was making stuffing. I made instant coffee and sat by the window. My phone stayed silent all morning. No calls, no texts. Around noon, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. Victoria had posted a photo. The whole family around the dining table. Mom, Dad, Victoria, her husband Brad, their 2-year-old son in a tiny turkey sweater. Everyone was smiling. The caption read, "So grateful for my family. These are the people who matter most." I zoomed in, counted the place settings. For adults, 1 toddler. 5 chairs. There wasn't even an empty seat where I should have been. They hadn't just excluded me. They'd erased me. I closed the app. I thought about ordering delivery and spending the day in bed. But something in me refused. No. I wasn't going to let their rejection turn me into what they accused me of being, a sad, bitter, dramatic mess. I grabbed my coat. If I was going to eat Thanksgiving dinner alone, I was going to do it somewhere with actual food, with light, with life. Harborview Grill was one of those old Boston institutions. Dark wood, brass fixtures, cloth napkins. More importantly, it was one of the few restaurants in the city that stayed open on Thanksgiving. When I pushed through the door, the warmth hit me like a wave. The smell of roasted turkey and fresh bread. Everywhere, families. The hostess looked at me with barely concealed pity. Just one tonight? She led me to a tiny two-top in the corner, squeezed between the kitchen door and a large family that took up 3 tables pushed together. I could have touched their chairs if I reached out. Your server will be right with you. I sat down, opened the menu, tried to look like this was a choice. The family next to me was celebrating hard. An older couple at the head of the table, probably in their late 60s. A middle-aged man with his wife and 2 kids. And a younger man around 30 who kept making everyone laugh. 3 generations. They passed dishes back and forth without asking. They interrupted each other in the way that only people who truly love each other can. This is what family is supposed to look like. My turkey arrived. Golden skin, cranberry sauce, a perfect scoop of mashed potatoes. It looked like a magazine photo. I couldn't taste any of it. I sat there pushing food around my plate, trying not to cry. And suddenly, the tears came before I could stop them. I turned my face toward the window, pressing my napkin to my eyes, trying to disappear like I always did. Honey. I froze. A woman's voice. Warm, concerned. Are you okay? I looked up. The older woman from the family next to me was standing beside my table. Silver hair, kind eyes. She was looking at me like I mattered. I'm fine, I said automatically. Just allergies. The woman raised one eyebrow. Allergies don't usually make people cry into their napkin on Thanksgiving. I let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. That obvious? Only to someone who's paying attention. She had a gentle voice, but there was steel underneath. I'm Eleanor. Tori. Well, Tori. She glanced back at her family, then at me. No one should eat alone on this day. Why don't you come join us? I shook my head immediately. Oh no. I couldn't. I don't want to intrude. You're not intruding. I'm inviting. She smiled. There's a difference. My husband tells terrible jokes and my son keeps trying to start political debates. You might as well come suffer with us at the big table. The older man waved at me. She won't take no for an answer. Trust me, 43 years and I've never won an argument. The younger son grinned. He's not wrong. I looked at my cold turkey, my empty table, my napkin still damp with tears. Then I looked at Eleanor Morrison and her warm eyes. Okay, I heard myself say. If you're sure. I'm sure. She put her hand on my shoulder. Come on. We just opened another bottle of wine and there's way too much pie. They made room for me like I'd always been there. Someone pulled up a chair. Someone else handed me a plate. Before I could even sit down, I had a glass of wine in my hand. "I'm Richard," the older man said, shaking my hand firmly. "This is my wife, Eleanor, our son Daniel, his wife Sarah, their kids Emma and Lucas, and our youngest, Marcus." "Hi," I gave an awkward little wave. "I'm Tori." "Thank you so much." "What do you do, Tori?" Daniel asked, passing me the mashed potatoes. "I'm a graphic designer. Freelance mostly." "That's wonderful," Sarah said. "I can barely draw a stick figure." "Mom, stick figures are easy," Emma said. She looked about 8. "Even I can do that." Everyone laughed. Not at anyone. With each other. It was such a foreign sound. Marcus caught my eye from across the table. He was around my age, maybe a little older, with dark hair and an easy smile. "Fair warning, my dad's about to tell a joke." "I am not," Richard protested. "He is," Eleanor said. Richard grinned. "Okay, fine. What did the turkey say to the computer?" "Dad, no," Daniel groaned. "Google. Google. Google." The kids burst into giggles. Sarah rolled her eyes. Marcus shook his head. And I actually laughed. A real laugh for the first time all day. Richard raised his wine glass. "A toast to unexpected guests who make our table complete." I looked around at these people, strangers until 15 minutes ago, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Warmth. Acceptance. Belonging. After the main course, while the kids ran off to explore the restaurant and the men argued about football, Eleanor moved to the chair next to mine. "How are you doing?" "Really?" I looked down at my plate. "Better? This is really nice." "Thank you." "You're welcome." But that's not what I asked. Something about her directness made me want to be honest. "I'm okay. I'm just having a hard Thanksgiving." "Do you want to tell me why you're really here alone?" I hesitated. The truth felt too pathetic to say out loud. But Eleanor waited, patient, no judgment in her eyes. "My mom called me 3 days ago. Told me not to come home for Thanksgiving. My sister is pregnant and she didn't want drama." "Drama?" "That's what they call it when I ask questions they don't want to answer." Eleanor nodded slowly. "I see. Can I tell you something I learned in 30 years as a family lawyer?" I blinked. "You're a lawyer?" "Retired family law." She smiled. "I've seen every kind of family dysfunction you can imagine. And I've learned that the people who accuse you of causing drama are usually the ones creating it. They just need someone to blame." The words hit me like a physical force. "You're not the problem, Tori." Eleanor put her hand over mine. "You never were." I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. Those were the words I'd needed to hear my entire life. I didn't go to Sunday dinner the next week. Or the week after. It felt too strange, too forward. But Eleanor called just to check in. By early December, I finally accepted the invitation. That first Sunday, I stood on the Morrisons' porch in Brookline for 5 full minutes before I worked up the courage to knock. Eleanor opened the door before I could change my mind. "There you are." She pulled me into a hug like it was the most natural thing in the world. "We saved you a seat." Over the next 6 months, I became a regular. Richard taught me to play chess, even though I lost every single game. Eleanor showed me her secret pie crust recipe. Daniel's kids started calling me Aunt Tori without anyone telling them to. And Marcus. Marcus and I became friends. Real friends. The kind who texted random thoughts at 2 a.m. and argued about movies. I didn't hear from my biological family once. Not a call, not a text, not even a Christmas card. For the first time in my life, I stopped noticing. Because for the first time, I wasn't performing for love. I was just loved. It felt like finally coming home. 2 years after that first Thanksgiving, Marcus and I weren't just friends anymore. He asked me to dinner at Harborview Grill. "This feels circular," I said, sliding into the booth. "That's the point." Marcus was nervous. "I wanted to bring you back to where it all started." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Tori, I want to spend the rest of my life choosing you every single day. I know your family hurt you. I know you're scared of people who are supposed to love you letting you down. But I'm not going anywhere." He pulled out a small velvet box. "Tori Thatcher, will you marry me?" Yes, I whispered. The restaurant erupted in applause. And then I saw them in the corner booth. Richard and Eleanor, champagne already poured, beaming at us like they'd known all along. The wedding planning began immediately. But one question kept me up at night. The invitations needed a line for parents of the bride. Robert and Linda Thatcher hadn't spoken to me in over 2 years. I couldn't put their names there. They hadn't earned it. One evening, Eleanor found me pacing in their living room. What's troubling you, sweetheart? I told her about the invitation. Eleanor sat down. There's something I mentioned to you once about legal recognition for chosen family. Do you remember? I nodded slowly. You said the law recognizes family that's created, not just inherited. Adult adoption, Eleanor said gently. It's a legal process where a consenting adult is formally adopted by another family. It creates a legal parent-child relationship. New birth certificate. New legal next of kin status. Everything. My heart was pounding. Eleanor, would you and Richard consider? She pulled me into her arms before I could finish. We've considered you our daughter since the first Thanksgiving. We were just waiting for you to be ready. When the judge signed the final order, I legally became Tori Morrison. The wedding invitations proudly read, parents of the bride, Richard and Eleanor Morrison. My biological family eventually found out. Victoria texted. I blocked her. My mother called 5 times in one day. Why didn't you tell us? We're your family. I deleted it. 3 years of silence, and now suddenly they remembered they had another daughter. The wedding day dawned golden. A vineyard in Napa Valley. In the bridal suite, Eleanor adjusted my veil. You look beautiful. On the vanity sat the wedding program. Parents of the bride, Richard and Eleanor Morrison. Underneath in smaller text, the family who chose her. Whatever happens today, Eleanor said, you have a family who chose you. We will always choose you. I love you, Mom. It was the first time I'd called her that. The ceremony was perfect. But during the reception, a security guard found me. There are 2 people at the entrance. They claim to be your parents. I'd expected this. Let them in. But don't seat them with the family. Put them in the back. I wanted them to see. Let them see what they lost. Let them witness the life I built without them. The MC stepped up to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the parents of the bride. I watched my biological parents from across the room. Linda straightened up, preparing to acknowledge the introduction. Richard and Eleanor Morrison. The room erupted in applause. Richard and Eleanor stood from the head table, beaming. And across the room, my mother's face went white. She grabbed Robert's arm. What did he just say? They had been replaced. Completely. Officially. Legally. And everyone in that room knew it except them. Linda pushed through the crowd. What is going on? Who are those people? I kept my voice calm. My legal parents. I was adopted 2 years ago. You can't just replace us. I didn't replace you. You abandoned me first. We never abandoned you. You told me not to come home. You chose Victoria. Every time. For 27 years. Marcus moved to my side. A solid, reassuring presence. I'm still your mother. Not legally. Not emotionally. Not anymore. Then my father spoke. Tori. I'm sorry. I turned to look at him. Robert Thatcher had aged. His eyes were wet with tears. I should have done better. I was a coward. I knew how your mother treated you, and I just stood there. The words I'd waited 3 decades to hear, and they came too late. I know you're sorry, Dad. But sorry doesn't undo the years you stood by and watched. Eleanor appeared at my shoulder. Linda stared at her with hostility. You're the one who stole my daughter. Richard stepped forward. We didn't steal anything, Mrs. Thatcher. You gave her away. We just picked up what you threw out. Linda flinched. 5 years ago, this young woman was sitting alone in a restaurant on Thanksgiving because her own family told her she wasn't welcome. My wife invited her to our table. We fed her. We treated her like a human being. We just showed her what family is supposed to look like. Richard nodded to the security guards. Please escort these people out. As they were led away, I held up my hand. Wait. I walked toward my biological parents. Mom, Dad, I need you to understand something. I don't hate you. I've made peace with who you are. You're just people who couldn't love me the way I needed to be loved. But I've also made peace with who I am. And who I am is someone who deserves to be chosen. Not as a backup. Chosen first. You didn't choose me. They did. And I choose them. I nodded to security. Goodbye, Mom. Dad. 5 years to the day after I sat alone in Harborview Grill, I sat at the head of a very different table. The Morrison house was chaos, the best kind. Emily, my 6-month-old daughter, was being passed from lap to lap like a tiny drooling treasure. Richard was sneaking extra pie when he thought Eleanor wasn't looking. She was. All right, everyone. Eleanor clapped her hands. Before we eat, we need a toast. She raised her glass and looked at me. Tori, would you do the honors? I stood, Emily in my arms, and looked around the table at the family that chose me. 5 years ago tonight, I was sitting alone in a restaurant, wondering if I'd ever belong anywhere. I thought I was unlovable. Then a stranger named Eleanor Morrison came up to my table and said, no one should eat alone on this day. And everything changed. I raised my glass. To family. Not the one we're born into, but the one we build. The one we choose. The one that chooses us back. Glasses clinked. Emily gurgled. And I finally knew, completely and unconditionally, that I was home.